Welcome back to Mindkind Podcasts. This is Dr. Jo North returning to our platform. Mindkind continues to be a reflective space for anyone who wants to stay sane in our demanding world. Our intention is to inspire, motivate and inform people of all ages interested in mental health and well-being. I'll be drawing on 35 years of practice as a psychotherapist, and we'll be looking at research and therapy along the way and talking with other experts in the field so we can draw on their skill. Nothing in this podcast is intended to cause you shock or surprise. If you think a subject is going to cause any triggering to any conditions that you have, please don't listen and just choose another podcast of interest. If you happen to be in a podcast and something in there triggers some kind of anxiety or stress for you, please switch off straight away and contact your mental health professional. If something affects the mind, we'll be talking about it. So let's get on with today's podcast. Welcome to the Food Sane podcast. I'm Jo North, chartered psychologist and senior accredited psychotherapist, and I'm founder of Food Sane, where we explore a saner, kinder, more compassionate relationship with food, eating and our bodies. Today, I'm doing something a little bit different from my usual podcast of what 3 things have I learned this week, because I'm talking not about food, but about clothes. Because I've been thinking lately about how the same story plays out in so many areas of women's and men's lives. The story that says, wait until you're smaller, wait until you're different, wait until you've earned it, and then you can have the beautiful thing. I don't think that works for us. I think that the key philosophy, the cornerstone of Food Sane is this body is right for me now. And we start from a position of acceptance, not of you're so bad, you're going to have to wait. So my guest today is Emma from I Love Snob, which is the online boutique and the boutique also in my hometown of Tiverton in Devon. It's the most wonderful shop. I've been shopping there for years, and she dresses women, and I can't say men because it is a specifically women's dress shop, but if you were trans in any way, it would be a wonderful place to shop. But she dresses women predominantly from size 10 to 18 and 20, and she has built her whole business around one simple belief that every woman deserves to feel beautiful right now, exactly as she is. And in fact, our worlds are very different, but our philosophies totally coincide, as you will hear in this lovely, lovely meeting that I had with her. I think you're going to love this conversation because what Emma does for wardrobes, Food Sane tries to do for the way that we eat and the way we think about our bodies and our relationship with our bodies. And I think it transpires very clearly that we can dress in a way that increases self-acceptance, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It turns out that our philosophies are exactly the same. Enjoy the podcast. So here I am with Emma from I Love Snob. I'm really completely crazy with excitement today to talk to Emma because I think there's such a great connection between what we do at Food Sane and what she does in her online shopping and in her shop in Tiverton, and the way that she thinks about women and shape and size and the inclusive model that she goes with. And I was thinking about how our work coincides, and I came up with this little statement, and I'm going to make it and see what Emma thinks. It goes like this: what you wear changes not just how others see you, but how you think and feel about yourself. And I think that's a great place to start, because what I always say to women and men who are really troubled with metabolic disorder and problems with weight and problems with size, I say this: you don't start by hating yourself, and you don't make changes by being unkind to yourself. You start by saying to yourself, this is me right now. And that includes dressing for now.
And that's where Emma comes in. And by the way, Emma, hi, I'm so pleased to have you here. But I am wearing one of your
I
asymmetric
noticed.
tops. And I've just got to tell you about these asymmetric tops. I could have worn these when I have been 4.5 stone heavier than I am now, and I could have worn this top and it would have looked as great on me as it does now. I am literally a size 10 these days. So I've just got to say, if you want something that's going to look good and it doesn't matter how you're feeling or what size you are, this is so amazing, Emma. Where did you find these?
I know they're brilliant, aren't they? I've been stocking those for several years, I must say. And when I first got them, because they are sort of wonky, it's square with arms on sort of diagonal sides.
Yeah,
Um, it was like, well, why do you wear this? So we couldn't hang them up. When you hang them up, they look awful. But just over time, because they were so popular, one of those things that just really just took off because people would put them on and then they go, what's that? And then they just fall in love with them, and then
I know.
they come back with two or three at a
Yeah,
time. The quality, they've got a number of different qualities that you get because they've got so popular, but these are the original ones, and so the quality is really fantastic. They wash up brilliantly, they suit everybody, and you've only got to sort of put one on to feel fabulous.
I
So
know. That's the thing, isn't it? I've got to tell you, I have 8. I could definitely have more because I'm thinking of yellow.
yes, all my new spring colours are coming in the next sort of week or so, so that's going to be great.
Yeah.
But interesting what you said about getting dressed up and about how that does affect you. I actually did something on my blog. I've got a blog on the website where I talked about dressing up. And we've been dressing up since we were cavemen. You know, you hear about war paint and armor. So now in 2026, what people are doing every single day, whether they know about it or not, is that they are dressing up. Now, unfortunately, sometimes you go somewhere. I mean, I've certainly been somewhere, especially when I was in corporate life, and you walk in and you don't feel as if you're dressed like everybody else.
Mm,
Because there's a uniform, even if we're not still at school,
mm,
there is a uniform. And then you feel out of place, and then you start to feel not confident, or you feel out of place. And then, of course, everything begins to fall apart for you. You know, so actually, you dress up for the day that you want. And I remember this when I was sort of thinking about how this podcast was going to go. I remember lockdown. And in lockdown, I remember doing a sort of a raw video to my followers because for one reason or another, I was alone. My children weren't at home. I was in this big house. I was trying to keep all the business together, look after all the staff, all this stuff that was being thrown at me from the government, you know, which I suddenly had to navigate. And I remember thinking one morning, I don't want to wake up. Not, I don't want to kill myself, but I certainly thought, I don't want to wake up today
mm,
because it was another day in lockdown. It was another day of all the stuff that we had to do. And I remember talking about this in one of my live videos and saying, you know what, girls, sometimes you just have to put a bit of lipstick on. And
mm,
putting a bit of lipstick on would just make you feel 5% better.
mm.
Actually, 5% better is going to be the difference between you losing it and keeping it together today.
Yeah,
And I think it's not just about putting your face on and putting your war paint on. It's about, you know, getting dressed up for the day. And it
yeah.
starts from the stuff that nobody else sees. I am a massive advocate of good underwear.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, it doesn't matter what size you are, and it doesn't necessarily have to be all about your sexy underwear because that's maybe not for you because it's bloody uncomfortable. But it's just, you know, some days you need underwear that is going to be supportive, that is going to make you stand up tall. Some days you want something that you know is very, very pretty or very, very sexy.
Mm,
Um, and some days it's just that, you know, that roll of fat is not going to go from my stomach because my kids have been in there making a mess when I was pregnant. But I want to feel fabulous in this dress. So
mm,
it all starts from the underwear that nobody sees, as that is certainly for yourself. And in my dressing room, in the shop, I am well known and I have to hold back sometimes for pinging people's bras because, you know, I say, is that your best bra? You know, oh no, I've had this longer than my kids and whatever. How do you expect to stand up tall, especially as we get older and our shoulders slip from one end to the other and we got one boob bigger than the other? How can you expect anything to work for you and to look good if you've got crummy underwear on.
Mm. Mm.
So it does definitely start from the foundation wear upwards.
Mm.
And also colour. You know, there are certain, and I know there's lots of people who do sort of colour therapy and they come in with these swatches and, you know, oh, I can't wear that because someone told me that I couldn't wear it. I've sort of got a love-hate relationship with that because it's all about interpretation. But sometimes you look at a colour and it just makes you feel joyful. It just lifts you up. It might be a memory. I remember my children's nursery was a beautiful buttery lime, almost like the inside of those sweets, which were sort of chocolate limes, you know?
Yeah.
And whenever I see that colour, it just brings me joy.
Mm.
Because that reminds me of that nursery. Sugared almonds. I love sugared almond colours, which is the colour of your sweater.
Yeah, yeah. Pink.
Because I just have always loved all of those beautiful colours all sat, you know, in a cup somewhere. And I just think, doesn't that look joyful? But that's my own personal perspective. So
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much because it's really personal. But if we transfer that into a bit of psychology, you know, everything you're talking about, those clothes are an emotion.
yeah,
They are an emotion. They are the emotion of your life. And it's also quite emotional hearing your story. I was making a note to myself there that I can think of several times in my life when a dress has really transformed quite a difficult state of mind. Yeah.
yeah,
And I'm going to tell you about one. It was, I think I can tell it without feeling really sad about the situations, but I remember I was about 25 and I was not in a good place. And a friend said, I'm going to lend you a dress. I mean, I didn't even buy it, Emma. I didn't even buy this. She lent me this dress because I think she thought I probably was a bit of a mess, to be fair. And she was being kind. I put it on, and honestly, I felt like $1 million. And the only thing sad about it was I had to give it back to her in the end. But we used to kind of lend dresses, you know. And it did transform an incredibly difficult situation, but it helped me think better of myself and it helped me rebuild. I had to rebuild my life effectively and it helped me to rebuild. So we're not talking, you know, this isn't a frivolous conversation, really, is it? You know, I know that you were sort of, when we were thinking together about what we might say, and you said, you know, women come into your shop and they're not just looking for an outfit, they're looking for perhaps a shape in their identity. And I remember because I'm quite often in your shop, I've got to confess, I'm always having a little look to see what you've got. And I've met all sorts of people in there. I mean, one lady was shopping for a funeral for her child. We were in your shop, you weren't there that day, but all of us in there were having a conversation about helping her find the right out. She said, oh, it can't be black, it's got to be colourful and all this. You know, we're not being frivolous, are we, when we're talking about what we wear? It really does matter.
absolutely. And I think that what we're creating and what we've created in Snob, and it's not just me, it
Mm.
is all the staff that work for me currently, the staff that have worked for me in the past, the ladies that have supported me in all of the shops, especially Tiverton. It has become this community almost, this little safe, sacred place where people can come in and when I'm there, I can be a little bit mouthy and take the jokes a little bit too far. But I always say something like, you know, when we were younger, we used to talk about sex, periods, and babies. Now we talk about death and menopause, you know, because that is very often what is being, you know, talked about in the shop with
Mm.
ladies of a certain age. And I like to think that they do feel that they can come in and they're in a safe place where we won't judge them on what they look like. And we have the best intentions for them. I've always said, I will never let anyone go out. So the next person that sees them says, what are you wearing? You know, I want them to say, what are you wearing? You know, I
Yeah,
want them to
exactly.
come out with a real
Yeah,
sort of spring in their step. So I won't ever let them go out looking terrible
yeah,
because ultimately it will
yeah,
come back on me and they'll never come back again. I want them to go out with their heads held high.
yeah,
And it was interesting because obviously we get all sorts of people, we locals and people now traveling. We become a destination boutique in Tiverton. And I didn't hear it, but a lady came in last week and she said to Rachel, she went, have you got anything stylish or fitted? And she sort of looked around and sort of, you know, walked out all clucky. And my first feeling was, oof, we don't need people like her in.
Mm.
But then afterwards, I reflected and I'm thinking, well, actually, we weren't there for her because, whatever it was that when she came through the door, she had either been influenced by something that she had seen or she liked the front door of the shop. She thought it looked fun. There was lots of people in that day. We were doing photos and filming and all sorts. And I thought we didn't meet her. When she came in, we didn't meet her because obviously she came in with a bit of an attitude, but we didn't meet what she actually wanted, which was a shame. And there was obviously something I would have liked to have been able to sit down with her and find out a little bit more about what we could do, because very often people like that come in, they're stuck in their ways. They may be dressing like in their uniform again of her peer group, or maybe she's dressing how her husband wanted her to dress. We don't know what's going on in her life. Maybe she is dressing like her mother did at her age, and now is looking for a little bit of different style. And when she came in, scared to death at the fact that a lot of it was one size, that everything is there in colour rather than, like it is in Marks and Spencer's, in skirts and dresses and tops. And she just got overwhelmed and then walked away. So
Yeah. Well, I
it
mean,
was a shame that happened, but maybe.
yeah, well, let's let whoever she was, I hope she's listening, and please come back. Because
Yeah.
the thing is, with your shop is that, as I say, I've been buying clothes from your store for ages. And when I've been bigger and when I've been smaller, and you can definitely get fitted stuff. You cinch it. I mean, what are you? You're 6 foot, aren't you? You're built like a model. You model your clothes. You look fabulous. You can wear anything. And sometimes you wear loose stuff and sometimes you fit it closely to you. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I think she didn't quite spot that sort of flexibility, did she? That is there.
Certainly, and it's also, my granddad used to say, I didn't know my granddad, but my mum used to say that my granddad, if a man used to come in to take her out, my granddad used to look at his shoes and always say, oh, shoes maketh the man, which is an old fashioned saying. And I've often used that and said, right, well, if shoes maketh the man, accessories maketh the woman. Because, what we're able to do is with an accessory is make that piece, which could be one size, it could be, like 1,000 that they're doing in Marks and Spencer's, but you can make it your own. And you need to have somewhere like Snob that you can just mess about with the accessories,
Yeah.
whether that be a belt or a scarf or a necklace, or, I love turning things around the wrong way, just to.
Yeah.
And in this world of Instagram and influencers and online selling, in the boutique land now, it's all about the online and then the returns. Because, of course, I might have sent out 100 pieces, but then you then get some back. And then you get reviews. So last week I had a review, because she didn't like it. And she gave me a 1 star. And it's like, well, hang on. All the information was on the listing, about the material and about the fit and about da 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 da. She didn't read it, but also she had looked at the picture of the influencer, whether it was me or Harriet or whatever, and she went into her bedroom with maybe bad hair, bad attitude, row with her husband, and put it on and didn't feel the dopamine hit that she wanted to feel when she saw it on the picture. So as much as I love online, and without a shadow of a doubt, it has saved my business, I love people coming into the shop because it is a way that we can almost, you come into the hub of Snob and we can look after you and guide you through the process. You can have fun. There's no judgment. You can go in our now beautiful changing room with all the mirrors and everything. So, and we want you to relax into, right, how can I make this me?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Do you find women in your shop, do they ever come in and say things like, I'll treat myself to something nice once I've lost some weight? Sort of like, I will start my life when I'm better. And I'm working a lot with saying to people, you do not have to get better. You have to just start right here and right now. I talk in my book on Food Sane about, I used to run a group. It was called Eating and Self-Worth. And the first thing I would do was I'd say, get out of here at the end of this meeting and go and get something fabulous. Swap, buy, do what you like, but come back, next week, showing me your most fabulous self, and then you can start to talk to me about change. Yeah. And that worked every time. But anyway, do you find that you hit up against that a little bit? So, oh, when I'm this or when I'm that? Because the thing is with your clothes, like I say, there's no when I'm this or when I'm that about it. It's just like, how about now?
Yeah, absolutely. I do get that a lot. And because we're one size, then we can always say, well, if you did lose some weight, or when you do, or, if that's what your plan is, they will fit you slightly differently. And you can then accessorize and you can layer. I do find, it's a bit like you're never happy with your hair, are you? If you've got straight hair, you want curly hair. Some people who have lost a lot of weight, they still dress for the body that they used to have because they're used to buying, more shapeless things to hide. And then you say, well, no, you can change that and do that. And it's almost like they don't believe what they're seeing in the mirror because they're still not happy with what is going on in their mind. And then you've then got the other way where you've got ladies who are very, very curvy, and then they want everything skin tight. And then they're quite upset when the curves are showing.
I think we're not raised to accept our bodies exactly as they are and dress for now, dress for your shape, because I think there are ways to make yourself look even better if you're curvier. You can make yourself look awful by dressing the wrong way. And I think your people would need to intervene, wouldn't they? I mean, sometimes people have said to me, oh, actually, no, that doesn't look great on you, Jo. And that's probably the best thing they can say to me. It's just like, I mean, that's brave because they weren't going to get the sale. It's just like it's me thinking, oh God, I've made it. No, Jo, it doesn't look great. No, try this instead, And we kind of need that little nudge, don't we?
I think we do. And there's a couple of points that I'm thinking when you mention that, and that's women's bodies. So
Yeah.
women's bodies go through huge change in a relatively short period of time, especially if you have children. And then you've got menopause, monthly, you could expand, one dress size because of your menstrual cycle. And then if you throw in a little bit of disease and grief and loss, when you don't really care about yourself too much because you're caring for everybody else, and then suddenly you go back into a store to dress, and of course you haven't got the body that you used to have. So that is, quite a big thing that we handle on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And of course, online, we get that, but we don't even know it. I mean, at least when people come in the shop, we can look in their eyes and we can sort of get the feeling, and we can ask a few questions about what is going on in their lifestyle to sort of help them choose things. There's no giving a ball dress to someone who's just, mucking out horses the whole time. But online, we just don't get an opportunity to do that.
No.
And I do remember a time when I was in my shop in Budley, and there was a couple stood outside, and they had matching anoraks on, matching carrier bags,
Yeah.
and actually then matching haircuts. And they came in, and it was husband and wife.
Oh. Okay.
And I was thinking, what's happened
Yeah.
there? And without
What, did you
judging,
do couples therapy? Were you doing
I
couples?
know, but without being judged, I was thinking, what point did you sort of say, oh, well, we'll just both wear that cagoule? Oh, well, we both go to the barbers. Yeah, at what point did she sort of make those decisions that she was going to be literally turning into, the husband, with the same cagoule and the same haircut and the same, if I just felt I can see them now looking outside the shop, and it was just sort of very sad.
Yeah.
But maybe they've always been like that. When I was coach, I think I told you that I used to be a coach. And we used to do a lot of stuff on self-talk. And the person that is talking to you the most, it was not all these other people. It is you, isn't it? It's you and your self-talk. Oh, I can't wear that. I can't do that. I can't do whatever. But actually, there are layers and layers and layers of stuff that other people have said to you in the past that is just sticking in your head. So when it comes to, doing that and either losing weight or getting that job or going for that or whatever, in the back of your head, there's someone saying, nah, that's not for you. You can't wear that.
Oh, that is so vital. Thank you so much. I mean, it's literally what I'm saying all the time, because I talk about self-talk will make you binge, self-talk will make you eat the wrong food. Self-talk will make you not care. Thank you so much for raising that, because I think it's vital in my work. It's just like what you say in your head is what is going on all the time. And I've got a big one that goes on, and it goes, I'm not good enough. And the best thing you can do is own it. I mean, how much crap is that? I mean, literally, what a waste of my life is that comment, even. But I don't think that's unusual. I mean, the reason I say it out loud is because I don't think it's unusual, and I don't believe it most of the time. But every now and then it will emerge. And again, it can be the most simple outfit, say these asymmetric jumpers, absolutely will make a statement for me, like, I absolutely am good enough, because they're a great shape. They are a lovely shape, whatever size I am. And somehow we need clothes that tell us that we are good enough. I mean, I don't know what era you were raised in, but I was born in 57, so it was a bit skinny. Women were expected to be a bit skinny, and there's still that going on. I mean, there's still very slender women who think that they're not good enough. It's got nothing to do with their size. It's got to do with the thinking you get inside your head. So no, it's really, really interesting that you raise that subject. I bet most women walk in your shop with that statement in their mind.
I remember one year I was a good size 16. I started snob in 2011, and I am 6 foot tall, and people say, oh, I know, but you can wear that. You can be fat or whatever. But I am long. I'm not particularly shapely, and I've got sort of everything about me is long. I'm 6 foot tall, but my legs aren't particularly long, but I've got a sort of long legs, long body. I'm long limbed. And then when you put then a bit of meat on that, you just end up sort of being a sort of a horizontal sort of, shapeless.
Yeah.
And I decided that I was going to lose a bit of weight for my 50th birthday. So about 48, I started with a personal trainer actually in Tiverton. And the other thing that I did, apart from doing the personal training and everything, I think, well, I want to be more graceful because I've always been knock-kneed, flat-footed, probably to do with the ADHD. And I'm thinking about other stuff, not putting one foot in front of the other. And I wanted to be more graceful. So I decided for my birthday month, I was going to wear a dress every day, not trousers. And of course, then I'm born in the summer. So it was the whole of July. It was a nice summer. And then, of course, you have to wear different shoes. I then have to accessorize. You then have to sort of, do different things. That changed my life. I got to say, wearing a dress every day changed my life.
Oh my goodness. How did it change your life?
Because it just made me more feminine. Because again, I'm 6 foot tall, I'm quite mouthy, and call a spade a shovel. I often, especially in a male sort of perspective, this is very rude. People say they all want to fight me or fuck me.
No, I get it. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of women are quite, oh, well, she's a bit too much.
Yeah.
Men, oh, she's a little bit too much. And it sort of allowed me to step into femininity in my way.
Okay. So you had to own your femininity. Yeah.
So in the past, my relationship with a dress had been special occasion. You wear a dress to a special occasion. Closet full of dresses, never wore them because I wasn't ever going to any special occasions. So what I would wear then during the day with leggings and trousers and stuff like that and tops, then having to wear a dress every day, it made me walk slower because I often wore heels. It made me stand up a little bit taller because suddenly then I had to think about my underwear, especially over the summer because it was linen and light. And it just made me far more purposeful about getting dressed every single day. And it also made me think about my own femininity and my version of it, because as much as there is toxic masculinity, there's also a big toxic femininity. And what I didn't want to be is all tits and teeth. That wasn't going to be me. So over that month, I created my own understanding of what my version of femininity was, which suited me. And I did it every single day. I wore a dress. And I told everyone at the shop that that's what I was doing. And we then talked about it. And then after that month, I then dressed every day far differently.
Yeah.
Because I sort of brought that with me, even though I wasn't wearing dresses every day. It was far more purposeful.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's a great story. Thanks so much. It's kind of like a mindful dressing, isn't it? And also what you're talking about is like you dressing to change the habit of a lifetime. Okay, so I've got this persona, it's a little bit feisty, which I happen to think is great. It's taking you places, let's face it. Um, and I just want to feel like I want to get that feminine part going a little bit.
Yeah.
And you change, I mean, change your behavior, change your habits.
Also, losing the weight as well
Yeah,
is actually much easier to wear a dress than it
yeah.
was to then.
So tell us about losing weight then. What did you do?
Well, I was coming up to 50. I was about just the end of 48. And when I was younger, I was quite skinny, always had this sort of up, down, up, down. I started my menopause really early at 42.
Awesome.
And I was very busy. And I just started to put on the pounds, felt really unattractive. And I spoke to a local girl who was a personal trainer. I joined a gym. I wasn't really up for it, Joe, to be honest with you. It was really boring going to the gym. And so what I was able to do with the personal trainer is that she gave me accountability. So she was evil.
Mm.
I used to go there a couple of times a week in her garage.
Yeah.
And she used to then make me text her everything I put in my mouth.
Really? Oh, wowzers. Yeah.
Everything I put in my mouth. And then she would then come back to me with whether that was good or not. She didn't pull any punches at all. Well, it's full of processed food. That's not going to do you any good. Have an apple instead. Have some peanut butter. And so it gave me someone to just not just tell me what to do, but to guide me in a very straightforward way, which suited me. And over the course of, quite a few months, I then started to see the results, thinking, I like this. I didn't need to eat. I mean, there were times, especially when my children were younger, if I remember looking back at the shopping trolley, it was full of beige. It was full of beige food. Full of quick food, full of food that I could just prepare really quickly because I was, running shops and boys and that sort of thing. And as they sort of were leaving home and, getting involved with more things, I also bought a Thermomix. Best thing I ever did, because it enabled me to cook food really quickly, and good food, and I'd know exactly what was in it. Then I could mix things up a little bit, so I could also give my children food that we all wanted to eat rather than just me. And then I just saw the pounds and the stones and the dress sizes come off. And as I say, I probably got a photograph I could share with you. It's on a boat in Australia, and I just looked like a pork chop. And I liked what I saw. And if I talk about alignment, it just gave me more alignment in terms of
Exactly.
the
That's
next
what I'm.
stage
Yeah.
in my life.
Yeah.
I've come from being a mum and from sort of, I say all I did was hold the coats. Having two boys, we didn't do nice things like ballet and stuff like that. I had one who was a choir boy, so we were always at the back of the cold cathedral. I had one that was a rugby player, so I was always on the side of a pitch holding the coats. Never get involved because I was a single mum. Not many people spoke to me. And so I didn't have that, oh, let's have dinner. And because I came from London outside of Devon, I always felt as if I was an alien and they didn't really get me and get my sense of humour. So it was quite a lonely time, which is probably I came on to sort of, I had a croissant every morning because that made me a little bit better.
Yeah.
And so it just, as that life then changed, I just had far more alignment with what was on in my head, what was going on in my body, and what I wanted to portray to the world.
That's very good. Very good. I mean, that's kind of very much in keeping with what we do at Food Sane. I think probably dropping the beige food, what we say is all of that beige food, all that ultra processed food, it blocks the stomach receptors to the brain. It actually literally blocks them. And it means your stomach can't say to the brain, I'm full now. I don't need any more food, And so when you use the word alignment, I use that word a lot. It's sort of like you line up your stomach with your brain again. And you don't need to have to do too much to do that. And we do it by two things. Firstly, gradually knocking off the ultra processed food, but most of all, just keeping in a good eating window, trying to kind of keep in a great time frame. But either way, you did it. And what you're saying is you feel like you're more yourself. And that's kind of like what we want to feel, isn't it? There is a self. We all have this unique self and we want to feel at home in the body. And we want to feel a sense of comfort in the body. But it sounds like you were going through a lot as a single mom, and I expect you did eat for a bit of comfort,
And you also got this hangover, haven't you, from, when I was younger, being able to eat whatever I liked.
Yeah, I didn't have
and,
that myself.
and then suddenly menopause hit early at 42,
Yeah.
and I couldn't anymore.
Yeah.
And then you sort of, why is this happening to me?
Yeah, exactly.
Why suddenly
Yeah.
can I see that biscuit turning on
Yeah.
my chin?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. I know
And
it's torture,
for
isn't it?
me, everyone puts weight on in a different way. And
Mm.
mine, I get jowly.
Oh, okay.
I
Mm.
get sort of, like
Mm.
that. And then, of course, then, age slips down your face. So
Mm.
everything starts to sort of go down there anyway. So, and on your face, you can't hide it apart from surgery. Yes, now you can use contouring and stuff like that. At least you can put a big top on. You can be
Yeah, that's
top
true.
on to
Yeah.
hide your tummy. You can't do that on your
Yeah.
face. So I'm a big advocate of, if you want the Botox, have the Botox. If you
Mm.
want to, slap a load of makeup on to make you feel better, slap
Mm.
a load of makeup on.
Me too. Yeah.
Because that's the thing that you're looking at every time you look in the mirror.
Yeah, yeah,
If you-
exactly. Thank you so much for your stories. It's absolutely brilliant. I want to ask you about your ADHD superpower. It's got to be a superpower, hasn't it? You might not want to engage in that conversation, but
I
I know that you had a diagnosis, and I thought, oh well, she's got a superpower. No wonder she's so successful.
I was diagnosed at about the same time that I'd made this decision. It was about 47,
Mm.
48.
Mm.
And when I actually had my diagnosis, the consultant said to me, well, congratulations. Congratulations, you've got ADHD. And I thought, oh, hang on, I thought I was going to get a disabled badge. And I said, no, you are the closest thing to a superhero that walks the earth. And I thought, well, I don't really feel like that. So what having that diagnosis allowed me to do was to forgive myself for all the things that naughty Emma did when she was younger,
Yeah,
which I can now put down to ADHD.
yeah.
I mean, I'd gone through therapy as well. I had a bit of a nervous breakdown, just before this. And I was talking to a therapist and for about 2 years, every week. And I said, look, I'm not going to come anymore because I've just been diagnosed with ADHD. And she said, well, I thought so. I thought, hang on, you've been taking however much a week from me, and you always think that I've got ADHD, even though we've been going round and round and round about
Mm.
things
Mm.
that I said to someone at school that is still giving me hives because that's what it does. It's
Mm.
almost like you are reliving memories all the time. But with ADHD, it's impulsive behavior.
Yeah,
So
impossible.
I can't say no to a packet of biscuits.
No.
I can't say no to, I was binge drinking when I was younger. One drink's not for me,
Mm.
so I had to then look at, right, what can I have which would just not take me down that, oh God, I might as well finish off the bottle of wine. So I just don't drink wine anymore
Mm.
because I know that I will drink a whole bottle.
Yeah.
So that's why I always say I like a glass of champagne because, you're probably not going to go to a restaurant and buy a whole bottle, or I will have a gin and tonic, or I will have a tonic with a tiny little bit of taste in it to stop me then going down that one bottle will turn into two. So yeah, ADHD does give you the impulsivity.
Yeah, it's impulsive.
To,
But
to
don't you think
not
that can
turn it
work for
off.
you? That impulsivity can work for you, can't it? I mean, you take risks. Say for example, you must have taken loads of risks in your buying, and in your selling. I think it's a double-edged sword. Impulsiveness can work in the right direction. I bet it does, doesn't it, Emma?
Um, I suppose now with the understanding of it, so my brain works quite quickly. If you give me a crisis, I'll get you out. I will find a way. I
Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
the guy on Taken, I have a very specific set of skills. It is that, right? I've been in situations in the business where I've almost gone bust, but it's almost like I know how to get out of this. The brain is always thinking
Yeah.
of a different way. And then of also how to turn it around because my brain always wants to be positive. So, right, how can I turn this to a positive? I've messed up with some customer service. Right, what can I say? What can I do? Because as
Yeah.
ADHD kids, we broke something to take control.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
and that is a big thing to be able to admit. What I used to do is get so angry that I then have to sort of come back, and I saw my youngest child do it, and I could see that he was then, by having that kick-off tantrum,
Mm.
was getting my attention so he could then gain control.
Yeah.
And so sometimes in business I can go right to the wire and I'm testing myself just so I can then get the control, because that's then when the magical power kicks in, and then
Yeah.
all the synapses have come into fruition. And I know that now, and I know that my brain will find a way out.
You're a good problem solver.
Yeah, and I will look around. I will look around to see
Yeah.
how I can, how I can do it.
Yeah.
And I'm always coming up with ideas, and my brain never ever sleeps. And the best thing that I can have a dinner party and say I've had an idea. I'm thinking, right, come on. Even if it's not my ideas, I love other people's ideas. And then before we know it, we've started up a business. We've done a name on company's house. I've been there a few times.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely know what you're talking about. Okay, thanks for sharing that, because a lot of people will be very interested in that. Okay, so let's close on this one. So if you could say one thing to a woman who is putting off buying herself something lovely until she's a different size or shape, what would it be?
I used to have a lady that used to work for me called Sally Benz.
I remember
It was
Sally.
great. If someone said something like that, she'd say, "Can I just ask you a question? Does your husband play golf? Does your husband shoot?" And then they go, "Yes," and so whatever. So, well, just think of the money that they're spending, on doing that. Because actually what these ladies are saying, sometimes they very often won't say, "I'm not going to buy that because I'm not the right shape." Be, "Oh, I can't justify it this month," or it will be something, it will be something like that. "Well, I'm not too sure," or something like that. So it's almost like, let's justify it by you every day justifying someone else's.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a beautiful way to look at it. Speaking of husbands, every year you save my husband. He's never met you, but I'm sure he would give you the biggest hug in the whole world, because he's not very good at buying Christmas presents. He comes in looking helpless, and your ladies give him a big fat voucher, and I buy what I want.
Well, now on the new website, you've actually got a wish list.
Oh, really? Okay, good. That's
So
fantastic.
you can create a little wish list, so
Yeah.
we can actually wrap things up rather than giving you a voucher. Or, Joe, just give me the heads up.
Yes.
Heads up and say, right, I want that, I want that, I want that. We have people do that as well.
Lovely.
I think, when you said about what would you say to ladies who, it's all about justification. When I said about, someone else's justification. And so I'd love to sort of find out what is going through their heads at any point in time, and unpack it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just can't, and then sometimes it just will make you feel better. It
Yeah.
just make you feel better.
Yeah.
Giving someone another addiction, but dopamine comes in lots of different ways.
Oh, absolutely right. And I think there's nothing
Little
more.
purple carrier bags. That's how
No,
dopamine comes.
absolutely. You need to, that would be very good. Your lovely, beautiful purple carrier bags are definitely dope. I actually have got them in my wardrobe. I just look at them, and then that gives me a dopamine hit. So that's very cool. Emma, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's been lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. Check out the next episode on our platform. Don't forget, I'm a doctor of psychotherapy, not medicine or clinical psychology. My expertise lies in the field of applied psychology through psychotherapeutic models of practice. This podcast is not intended for diagnosis or treatment of any kind. If you are concerned about your mental health, do consult your doctor, who will guide you. If you are ever in a mental health crisis within the UK, dial 999. In all other parts of the world, check your mental health facilities or turn to someone who will support you.